Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 News, and with pretty much every single team trying to bring something or other to the Barcelona Grand Prix, Red Bull are not wanting to be outdone. Potentially a 5kg weight-saving upgrade they're going to bring forward, trying to cement their spot as by far the fastest car on the grid. Very much intrigued your thoughts down below, hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always, plenty to dive into today. First of all, this one I kind of thought was kind of funny really from the FIA, just because at the past race in Miami, there was that corner that, Sainz especially crashed out on. There was a couple of close incidents there. And Ocon as well actually hit the wall of that corner, and there was a lot of talk about the barriers that are in place, like the concrete barriers that will caused more damage to the drivers than it really should have been the case necessarily. So there's been some talk about that, and the fact that Norris doesn't really believe that they get listened to. We'll see that too in a second. First of all, this one, because yesterday, or I think it was yesterday, we talked about Nicholas Latifi, just because there were some rumours that came up from the Green Notebook that Joe Sower does after each race weekend, saying that the rumour has it, I've got the paddock right now, that Latifi might be fired mid-season, effectively by Williams, and they might, well, look to bring in Nick de Vries from Formula E, who, well, of course, is driving for Mercedes right now, and of course, isn't really getting a chance in the Mercedes Formula 1 seat. So that at least has been a rumour. Now, this guy Norris McDonald comes out with this earlier today. Toronto's Nick Latifi is fired by Williams F1. Two things: William better have a lot of money because there'll be a hell of a lawsuit, and his replacement, Nick de Vries, had better do a better job in that pig of a car, which is doubtful. So both of these kind of sentiments aren't necessarily bang on the money, because Alex Albon has obviously been doing a stellar job in that Williams, getting points the last couple of races, or, two out of the three last couple of races. And, he actually reckons that the Williams is pretty damn good this year, like that being Alex Albon. He reckons that it's their qualifying that's the anomaly rather than their race pace. But of course, Latifi's been way behind Albon, which might be driving them towards kind of getting rid of him, right? But doing this mid-season, of course, there's contract negotiation struggles that might, well, go down. And as he's saying, like, there's going to be a bit of a lawsuit if they try and get rid of him mid-year. But that at least was the rumour a couple of days ago. Apparently, though, this is not the case. At least, well, he comes out and says the following just afterwards. Correction: Nick Latifi will continue as a Williams driver for the foreseeable future. Information I received earlier today was incorrect. Doesn't matter how old you are, one often learns this important lesson. Get it first, but get it right. My apology, but first get it right. My apologies to Latifi. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know if he got the information from the same place that Joe Sower got the information, but yeah, there have been some rumours that Latifi's spot is certainly, well, look, we don't imagine he's going to be there next year. Question is he going to be gone mid-season? It seems rather doubtful, but still maybe not ruled out, to be perfectly honest, because this coming out today does certainly add more fuel to the fire of that possibility. Let's look at this then real quick. This is the Barcelona track, well, layout here at turn 13. There's currently the F1 cars go on this chicane. To turn 13, turn 14, there's a chicane here that the F1 cars take. What they're trying to do is put it back to how it was, because I think like the idea of changing around this turn 10 here was to try and make some more overtaking opportunities on this kind of, harsh braking zone into a tight left-hander. Kind of all the sweeping corners that you have around Barcelona makes it really hard to overtake a lot of the times, because there isn't really like a key braking zone you can dive down the inside of. But and maybe they kind of opened that up with this chicane here, but definitely isn't great for track flow, let's just say, especially heading into the final corner. That is obviously pretty key to get, well, a good line onto the main straight. But yeah, this kind of turn 13, they're going to try and bring this back, I think, and get rid of the chicane. That at least is the plan. And well, part of that, I think, is by, well, creating some better barriers, because certainly seen as a rather dangerous corner, you'll fly around here. Like, there's certainly been some incidents, right? That's kind of why they put in this chicane, but they seemingly want to kind of get rid of it. Now, it's not going to happen this year, but for next year, that might well be the case. The director actually says they're looking to homologate, to effectively kind of like approve for use the track without the chicane as that kind of, well, applicable for 2023. The circuit would then have two layouts, and then F1 could kind of decide what one was going to be used, if they wanted to use it without the chicane or with the chicane. And apparently one of the reasons why they've kind of thinking this actually could go without the chicane is that, well, to increase safety, with a solution to actually get rid of it, right, with the Tech Pro barriers. We'll discuss them here in a second, because they're basically trying to make it so that they can actually run on the track as maybe it was originally intended to be run on. So we'll see how that one goes. But this actually I didn't talk about yesterday, but was certainly a big talking point from the weekends. The Carlos Sainz and Ocon, both those incidents they had near the kind of like chicane, the Formula E chicane, people were calling it, on the Miami track. There was arguably too tight for the F1 cars. There was a few incidents on the barriers there, and the incidents were like pretty hefty, right? These crashes, even though not at incredible speeds, were like 51G, 48G crashes for Sainz and Ocon respectively. Of course, only for a fraction of a second, but Sainz even said that he actually got a bit tired in kind of his neck department effectively, just because like he wasn't fully recovered from the crash he had on Friday. Like he couldn't push 100% in the race. We saw that he was about 3-4 tenths a lap off the pace of Leclerc. Like and he's not been that far back of Leclerc in race pace, certainly so far this season. And he reckons the reason for that really was because he wasn't like 100% fit effectively because of the incident he had earlier on in the weekends. And well, Ocon actually, yeah, as you can see here, 51G impact for Ocon, 47G impact for Sainz. Of course, only for a very brief period of time. If that's maintained, you're dead. But after the impact, Sainz complained about the pain in his neck and his hips. Ocon bruised his knee. And of course, the barriers are effectively just straight up concrete rather than these kind of Tech Pro, more modern barriers is that, the FIA, of course, the drivers are saying, look, this is the barriers we need, especially on these dangerous corners. The FIA are saying, we don't really care. We more care about jewellery and making sure Hamilton takes his nose ring out or whatever. Maybe their priorities are in the wrong place. And well, Norris says a kind of similar thing. The FIA, of course, didn't change the barriers. They had those incidents on Friday. They could have changed something around or said, okay, we're going to do this different or whatever. Decided not to respond. And well, as Norris says, I think we'll discuss it as drivers with the FIA in Barcelona, because of course it's something they're going to probably try and do at the Barcelona track going into next year, as we looked at. And as he says, I guess we'll learn from the mistakes. I hope they learn from what's happened. At the minute though, it just doesn't seem like we get hurt. So very interesting stuff, no doubt about it. Let's dive then into some of these upgrades. So Mercedes and Ferrari both have kind of filming days. So I think the teams are allowed 2 promotional days. They can effectively just, I think 100 kilometers they get to drive, or I forget exactly what it is, but there's a number of laps or distance they're allowed to do to get some film and promotional footage for their team and the sponsors, this type of stuff. Now, I believe they're pretty much allowed to run what they want during these days. So I think Mercedes are trying these new measures they're trying to bring in here for Barcelona. And well, as Giuliano describes it, Mercedes crisis. So certainly not the ideal situation for them, but they're going to try and overcome it. And also, well, Ferrari are doing the same thing. They're doing theirs in Monza. Kind of interesting actually, because Monza, of course, circuit of speed, known as being a very fast track indeed. And of course, they want to make sure they can actually try and make some upgrades to improve their top end speed. Because if the Red Bull is going to be 10 kilometers an hour quicker on the straights, that's not really something they can afford to maintain that gap of, or they're not going to make any DRS passes, right? Which has certainly been the case as we have seen so far this year. So behind closed doors, we don't really know, but they are practicing, I believe, with the kind of new upgrades they're trying to bring forward, and they certainly are relatively significant. Right now, the gap over the last couple of races has been basically a couple of tenths of a second, the gap from Red Bull to the Ferrari behind them, we've seen that, of course, in Miami and recently, well, just before that in Imola. And of course, Ferrari we saw yesterday, they're trying to bring some more upgrades in. They reckon that the aerodynamic changes they're looking to make, and also some further weight upgrades, might save them, 3 tenths of a second, maybe a little bit more. If that works out, of course, they should overhaul that deficit to Red Bull and, be back on pretty much a level playing field, or depending on the track-specific circumstances, be the faster car once again, as they were, of course, in Australia not too long ago. Now, additionally, they're bringing a further upgrade in terms of weight. I think they're looking to strip off a transparent layer of paint or something on the Ferrari, because of course it's a beautiful looking thing, but they've decided that it's going to be a slightly different shade of red now, and that they're going to be able to save about 0.7 kilograms based on the current weight to reduce the weight of the F175. So every single team is trying to do this, because weight is, well, obviously a massive thing for these cars right now, and that's kind of the key thing that Red Bull are trying to deal with. They're pretty happy with their way their car looks aerodynamically, but if they can reduce the weight even further, that's going to kind of extend their position as the fastest car, at least at the moment. Now, Giuliano also says the following: yes, 2 kilograms overall. So they reckon in addition to the aero changes, they're pretty much bringing in a 2 kilogram further weight upgrade, which probably, I think, based on kind of what we heard, it might be in the region, depending on the track, of a tenth of a second, maybe a little bit under that per lap. So it's relatively significant. But well, Red Bull are certainly not one to be outdone. There was some rumours a couple of days ago that well, the development budget for the teams, Red Bull's already spent pretty much all of it, as has Mercedes. Apparently this is kind of BS. Well, according to this article here, the rumours of that are pretty much nonsense. So maybe we'll find more about this over the coming days. But from the same article, as their accountant Van Haren points out, that there's actually going to be a significant weight upgrade again for Red Bull in Barcelona, with Verstappen's car 3 to 5 kilograms lighter than it was in Miami, right? So they made a similar reduction in weight actually going into Imola with a few aerodynamic tweaks, and that seemed to make their car much more competitive. So if they're bringing in more expensive kind of equipment right here, more expensive parts to make the car even lighter than it already has been, then well, it's certainly a scary sign, because if Ferrari have some aero changes, they want to bring in some also weight upgrades to make them more competitive, and then Red Bull are still going to pull further ahead with some further weight upgrades, then of course that's what they're planning to do here. So yeah, if they do get 5 kilograms lighter, there's probably there might be a couple of tenths in that, at least on what Helmut Marko has said over these last few weeks as well, on kind of the topic of, yeah, we're going to try and get down to that minimum weight limit as much as we possibly can. So that's certainly the key. Apparently this is also coming, of course, to Sergio Perez's car. He had a pretty hard time last weekend, but arguably, right, if Perez didn't have the issue with the kind of the engine, that the sensor failed, they had to switch the sensors over, cost him about 26, 27 horsepower. If that wasn't the case, Perez probably would have had Sainz. He might have even had Leclerc. Who knows? It could have been another one too. So Red Bull are certainly not trying to slow down at all. It puts a pretty scary situation for the rest of the teams on the grid right now. But of course, Ferrari have certainly more to come, and they will need to if they want to keep up with what Red Bull are doing right now. But of course, Red Bull have their other issues. Verstappen has made it clear that look, it's not all sunshine and rainbows over there. There were still 2 races this year, Australia, and of course the first race in Bahrain, where Verstappen failed to finish. There are some issues they've got to solve, day 1, for example, in practice. In Miami, he could barely do any running at all because they had some issues with the car. So it doesn't seem the car doesn't seem absolutely flawless. It's kind of it's either going to finish first or it's not going to finish at all type cars. And even if Ferrari are slower, if they can consistently rack up the points and Verstappen's going to have the occasional DNF, then the championship very much does come into question once again. So definitely they've got some issues to solve outside of just the weight thing, but if they can, well, reduce the weight as well, that's going to, well, probably cause some significant advantage for them going into Barcelona. Of course, not the only team trying to bring a big upgrade. Mercedes are trying to do something. We've seen Alfa, Aston Martin, I'm pretty sure they're trying to do something significant, as are Alpine, but also Alfa Romeo. Apparently they've got a big upgrade in the works as well, trying to separate themselves from Alfa Tauri and Haas, because certainly Alfa have been kind of the surprise of the season to me so far, especially with Bottas and the car looking very competitive indeed. A few things to finish out the video here with. Firstly, this from Carlos Sainz, just some kind of comments really on the potential of winning the Spanish Grand Prix. Of course, he'd love to do so in front of his home nation. It would be unique because it would be the first and it would be at home. For that, I work every day and try and get it as soon as possible. The fans will want it, but the one who wants it most is me. So look, he's going to have a bit of a blinder of a race, there's no doubt. Even like so far this season where we've seen the likes of, Sergio Perez getting pole in Saudi Arabia to lots of people's surprise. Still, the way the race went, unfortunately for him with the safety car situation, didn't favour him at all. He pitted, the safety car came out, so Perez got unfortunate in that circumstance, but it would take a similar performance, I think, here from Sainz, having an absolute blinder of a quali lap, and then, of course, the Ferrari actually being more competitive than it was last weekend against the Red Bull of Verstappen and Perez to actually make this happen. But who knows, maybe there's DNS, maybe there's crashes. Like, it's probably, we're probably due a crash between some front runners at some point or another so far this season. Thought this is an interesting stat as well, actually. 12 pole positions now for both Vettel and Leclerc in their kind of history with Ferrari. Both have 12 poles, but only 4 wins for Leclerc compared to 12 poles, 14 wins for Vettel when he was, of course, with Ferrari. So, who knows by the end of this year? Of course, there's plenty of races still to go, but, Leclerc will have a pretty hard time catching up to, well, the 14 wins, but also the crazy amount of podiums that Vettel got during his career as well with Ferrari. And this also very interesting and kind of, unfortunate in a way, statistic that it's now been 9 years since Alonso's last win in Formula 1. Of course, he got that incredible, podium, I think, last year in Qatar, wasn't it, with the whole, Ocon Esteban defend like a lion type thing, and then the safety car situation happened, and Perez wasn't able to catch him up. But yeah, on this day in 2013, he won it, his most recent F1 race at the Spanish Grand Prix as well. So yeah, it's been quite some time for him. And yeah, just looking at this as well, 5 races in the battle so far. Look, the Ferrari keeps finishing every single race, but Verstappen is closing this gap very quickly indeed. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new as always, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.